back to another episode of the What's Your Motor podcast. Today I'm back here again with my fellow business partner,
What's good? What's
Brody,
good? What's good?
uh, Will Holloway. We're here for another episode, bringing it to you guys today on this lovely day. It's actually pretty nice,
Absolutely.
man.
It's nice. A little breezy, but that sun feels really good out here today. So,
Man, and at least we in the shade.
no question.
You know what I mean? So it makes it a little cooler. But today we're going to talk a little bit about mental health regarding students and,
Students
and adults.
and adults. I know in the school setting, a lot of things that I saw, with students that were going through certain issues, and then the adults that were advocating for those students, or the lack of advocation or lack of understanding that a lot of times that happens in schools. I
Hmm.
know you've been kind of talking about this with our guy Lee a little
Right.
bit on the Special Needs and Wants podcast, but I definitely have seen it up close and in personal, where some students need a little bit more support, and you want to make sure that you're doing the right things to be able to get them that support to get them to the next level. But mental health is a huge thing in schools. A lot of times people, depending on how you feel about it, and that's on the inside and on the outside.
Right.
Sometimes people on the inside don't really have a whole good grasp on what mental health is and what it's supposed to do and the strategies it's supposed to teach you. And so sometimes we get it a little bit lost, and then sometimes people, I don't say over advocate, but like
Hmm.
sometimes people a little overdo it a little bit to where we allow now the mental health thing is starting to become an excuse for certain students to be able to
Absolutely.
be able to behave a certain way. And
That's a
so
fine line that
it's
we
a
got to.
fine line. It's like, but it is a middle ground, and you just really got to find the middle ground. So it's
Right.
just like, so I just say it in regards to this. It's just like your mental health with anybody. If you don't find your balance on either end or whatever, it's going to be an extreme case on both ends, and so that's not what you want. So with a lot of these students,
Hmm.
it's just really trying to help them find the balance, and then finding that lane where they can fit into and actually start to believe in themselves enough so that they can flourish and even like come out of that lane a little bit more once
Right.
they get the skills that they need to be able to move to that next step. So
Hmm.
it's imperative that we really learn more about it, because there are a lot of situations where we could really have helped somebody out. And there's some situations because we didn't know enough, we pushed some students or some families into situations where they really shouldn't have been in those situations.
Or
So
we dismiss it,
that's,
right?
yeah,
And then,
absolutely.
if for you guys that don't know, and I know we talked about it, I think when we potted on our original podcast,
Yeah,
Holloway been a guidance counselor for umpteen years,
yeah,
so
for sure.
his perspective in regards to like students and dealing with students with different issues and things like that goes
Yeah,
way back. So he knows a lot about that. So that's another reason why. And I know we're a little late on a mental health month,
I mean,
but we here, we
anytime
back
will
in
work.
action.
Anytime works. I think
You know what I
anytime you can
mean?
come through and you can bring a resource or
Right.
try to bring some helpful information to people, I think anytime works. I know we at the end of the month, but like, we spent the first 3 weeks getting our mental health right.
Hey, ain't that the truth? That's the truth. We got families too, so we rocking out, so we recognize it, but we also know that we had some people asking for more content
Yeah,
in regards to this. So, thank you for being patient with us. But again, he was a guidance counselor. We worked hand in hand with each other.
yeah,
So a lot of things, like obviously, he had different situations with kids that I could not touch. I shouldn't have been involved in and things like that.
yeah,
And then maybe it was some times that I actually had to bring the kid to him. Do you remember
absolutely.
the one instance where I had to?
The young lady.
This was a mental health for
That's
sure,
when
though.
you talking about the young lady that had an issue with the family,
Yeah.
and she started to try to tell you, and you was like,
What happened?
that's Holloway Lane.
She
I'm gonna let you talk to
the
Holloway.
the young lady, she had something going on at home.
Something with family member.
The teacher called my phone, called down to my office and said, such and such needs to come down and talk to you, Mr. Cutler. She got something to tell you. All the kids know what's going on or whatever like that. So I'm
Yeah,
like, okay, send her down.
that situation
Before
was out of control.
that situation was crazy, but this is very, very important, especially for like people in schools, because you got to be careful what information you get, because
No
if you don't
question.
do something, you're negligent.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? And if you do hear something and you keep it under wraps, you're complicit.
you could be
You know
held
what I
liable.
mean?
You could be
And
held liable in a lot of situations where
right.
you were supposed to intervene
Yep.
because you knew about something that was going on. And as a trained educator, you're supposed to know these things, right?
Mandated reporter.
Absolutely. So it's a lot of things that happen as an educator that
Yes.
sometimes we leave off because there is a person that's in the building that can deal with that special population. But a lot of times that person is flying around all over the place because there's issues all over the building,
That was him.
whether it be academic, whether it be emotional, social, emotional type stuff, or whether it be a behavioral issue in some cases. Because,
Absolutely.
and I think I heard something about this just recently that they didn't want boys to get tested for ADHD because it's more of a behavioral thing.
Hmm.
And I understand why people feel like that, because there's a lot of mistrust in regards to some of the diagnosis, and
Historically.
we overdiagnose a lot of our African American boys, and you
Hmm.
really got to gauge the teacher who's in there, and can she actually, or he or she, I'm sorry, really actually deal with the behavior, and then really like sit the kids down to be able to get them to learn.
Right.
But the behavior sometimes is a hindrance. The
This is
behavior
true.
sometimes is so out of control, and it's the impulsivity of the behavior. It's not that the kid can't learn, but it's like it's hard for them to sit down. It's hard for them to focus. It's hard for them to do anything other than get up, because their body keeps saying you got to get up, you got to go do this.
Absolutely.
And so when the impulses are too strong and things like that, they do need to be regulated. Now, is every kid supposed to be on medication? No,
No.
no,
And that's where you come in a lot of times, where you provide a lot of strategies for the kids. So I remember you doing a lot of pullouts, especially with a lot of the hyper boys,
absolutely,
but also the girls too, in regards to some of the things that they were struggling with. I remember we had that one student that was extremely, extremely afraid to when she would come in late.
absolutely.
And remember, what did she used to do
So
when
the
she came in
student, so
late?
the student would come to school, and every, of course, you got to check into the main office so people would know. And sometimes when they checked into the main office, the teacher would know too, because the attendance would be changed. So if the teacher went back and looked at the attendance and saw that the student was there, sometimes that student would come,
Yep.
7:50, 8 o'clock in the morning. The next thing I know, I'd be getting a call from the teacher to say, it's such and such here. It's 10 o'clock. Yeah, I saw them when they walked in this morning. Is she here? Whatever. She hasn't reported to my room. Shoot. So now I gotta send somebody to the bathroom up there on the third floor, second floor, first floor,
Hmm.
to see if this girl is in there, or she's talking to a staff member that will actually, sometimes allow her to have a little minute,
Right.
and then drag that out a little bit, and
Hmm.
drag that out. Next thing you know, she's in the bathroom. So we would have to go find her. But so her self esteem was so low.
Extremely low.
Her self esteem was so low, and then
She would wear a hoodie.
wear a hoodie. Didn't really want to wear the uniform clothes at all, because it just wasn't flattering. And again, this was a bigger girl or whatever.
Right.
But again, there were other things that were going on in the home too or whatever, that just made that be more of a focus for her.
Absolutely.
And so really trying to work with her on those strategies and help her understand that, like, no, it's okay, and that people aren't necessarily looking at you when you come in. But I almost sometimes it was two doors to classrooms.
Right.
And there was a coat room door, and then there's a main door. There are a lot of times where I would try to like go to the main door and be like, "Well, go sneak in the coat room. I'm gonna let the teacher
As
know
a
that's what we're
distraction.
doing, so she can get into the classroom and actually feel comfortable." And eventually, those teachers, they understood how her insecurities and her self-esteem were so low that they really had to kind of put their arm around her and help her out. But there were just a lot of issues in regards to that, and we have, when we talk about like body shaming and body positivity and all these different things, yeah, as an adult and in certain environments or whatever, people are going to champion that stuff.
Right.
But we talking about a middle school with kids that really
Seventh graders.
they don't know, right? And then sometimes you have adults in these classrooms who they can't ring that all in. So yeah, these kids are talked about a lot of times,
Yep.
and we want to say it's bullying in a lot of cases, and sometimes it is, but a lot of times it's just kids being kids.
Yep.
It's not necessarily that they don't know that they hurting your feelings to such a degree.
Right.
Some kids just don't. Like, I was one of those kids. I didn't know that.
Right.
Several things happened when I was growing up, because we had, and I'm thinking through my lens.
Right.
I'm two-parent household, so we kind of had a little bit. But when you go to school or whatever, when you see people that don't, we ribbed in our house, right? So when we come out, it was like, oh, we ribbing.
Right.
But like that stuff really does do a number on so many kids, and you don't really know what's going on with some of these kids, because they never really tell you. But as a guidance counselor, you are privy to a lot of stuff, because sometimes you see it in a kid that this kid is not really taking part of the usual activities that other
Not
kids are.
confident.
They're not
You can see it.
confident. You can see it. So sometimes you can go to talk to that kid, but a lot of times they come talk to you when they develop a relationship and they realize that you're going to actually try to give them strategies to work their way through whatever it is that they're going through. I had a lot of young boys that I was working first through third grade, and I would even say fourth grade, in these boys groups, because it was, and a lot of times it was misunderstood.
Yes.
But there would be times where the boys, if you put that mix together, because all of them were really impulsive, they were going to cause the issues, right?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
And so you had to really take a lot of those guys and really show them the strategies and everything else. And to me, that's a small piece of what we're talking about for mental health. Mental health is a really broad and big topic, and there's a lot of things that you're gonna see inside of schools where it's more than just a behavioral thing.
Right.
Sometimes it's a social emotional thing where a kid gets mad and they don't have the skills to calm down.
Duh.
A kid gets, we had kids that run. We had kids that do all kinds of
We
stuff.
had a kid that when he would get upset in class or get in disagreement with his teacher, he would bang his head on the desk. He
Yeah.
would bang his head on the door.
Yeah.
He would slam things to where I remember the teacher was so afraid.
The teacher
she
was
removed all the kids away from him,
one side
and
of him.
she was even afraid.
She was afraid.
So it was like even that. So like we're talking about the kids' mental health, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we got these adults in the classroom. Again, we talking about teachers, just like we talked about my boy that we were talking about it from Instagram.
Yeah.
Him want to give up.
Yeah.
Let's just think about the teacher mental health. Typically, I would like to believe that a lot of teachers are empathetic, right?
Yeah.
Or empaths or whatnot.
Yeah.
Especially in terms of sometimes we got teachers that take home
No question.
just the burdens of their students.
Absolutely.
And sometimes it's bad because sometimes it's like you trying to be that savior.
Yeah.
And we don't want that savior complex for our kids.
For sure.
But you take that home, and then sometimes we get home, like we talked about last time. We put everything into these kids in that school because we want to make sure that they have an awesome experience.
Right.
We're trying to break down these barriers, and then we go home. We have nothing to
We
give
did.
to our kids.
We did. You did because you poured so much into trying to make sure, because you knew so in urban education, in education period, sometimes you come in and the kids are at a deficit already, right?
Already, and you know it.
So a lot of those kids are not suffering from a mental health issue, right? But they are suffering from the products of being of their environment.
Absolutely.
They're not read to
Mhm.
every night. They're not. That's not something that's a big part of their home, right?
Right.
So those kids are mixed in with kids who actually have mental health issues. And it's really hard for people to be able to differentiate which one is which.
And deal with all that.
And that's where a lot of the issues and the ignorance come in at. And that's why you have to really enlighten a lot of people as to, some of these kids are just been placed in bad situations and they haven't been nourished enough to be able to get them to the reading level that they want to be on, or the math level that they want to be on, right? So it's going to take some love and some really pouring into those kids to be able to get them there. Now, I want you to say, just based on what you just talked about, that kid that we were talking about, this kid was a huge kid. We were saying where he was banging his head on the
third grade.
Third grade. He was a huge kid at the time, bigger than everybody in the classroom, and comparable in size to the teacher.
Yes.
So again,
big boy. What
does a teacher do in that situation? Because you're not equipped to necessarily deal with a kid that's that big and that physical, and this kid would pick up desks over his head, right? And like slam him. So it's other kids around that. And if he hurts another kid, what do you say? Right? You're the adult in that situation. So it were a lot of times where that teacher would call and be like, "Hey, I need you to come get him now." Like he a little out of control. And then what's weird about it? So I just trying to give everybody a real picture of what we talking about with this kid. So I would pull the kid from the classroom, and sometimes it would be a little bit of a struggle, but sometimes he would come right away. He'd be pretty compliant with me, but it'd be all baby talk.
Yep, sure was.
So we had this big kid, and it's almost like kid was like a mix between Bam Bam and Pebbles.
Yeah, he was.
Because he was strong as a whole ox, bigger than most of the kids and everything else. But when you had conversations with him,
it was very baby talk. Yeah.
Like Bam Bam, like Pebbles.
Right.
So even having to talk him out of that, the mom was like, "Is he doing baby talk again?"
But guess what? Remember, we uncovered something else.
Mm-hmm.
We found out that he had just lost a loved one that he was
just had lost his grandmother, right?
Look how much we just.
And so
look at that onion.
All of that stuff that you had to peel back, Walt, to be able to understand really what's going on with these kids, and
this is kids' mental health.
Correct. So I'm saying, so we peel all that stuff back with the kid. We start trying to get him strategies or whatever. But I also got to get that teacher strategies, right?
This is what I'm saying.
Because when I'm not necessarily going to be there to be able to interject, you have to be able to do something with this kid eventually. You can't always call the guidance counselor to come in when he's doing that. But there is
the administrator every time.
There is. You know what? I need you to go over to the corner right over here and just kind of have your moment. Make sure you don't pick this up or pick that up. I'm going to give you 10 minutes to try to get yourself back. If you feel like you need a little bit more time, let's do a little hand second. You put the 2 up, I'm going to give you 2 more minutes. But
absolutely.
I need you to understand. I need you to come back to do what we doing. Okay? If that means you got to come stand by me to feel comfortable, cool. If that means you have to hold on to a stress ball,
Mhm.
something to keep something in your hand as far as texture goes, to be
Yep.
able to keep you calm and everything else,
Fidget
that's
spinner.
absolutely fidget spinner. So I kept all those little
Yep.
trinkets and things in my, so because some of them was texture, but sometimes kids just had to have something in their hand.
Yep. And
And so
it was calming for them.
it was soothing for them. So
Mhm.
sometimes they had to have that, but you trying to do those strategies to the point to where you can kind of wean them off, and they can start to feel like they can do the things that everybody else is doing
Right.
and moving them in their regular way. And so it's a lot going on, but you
Right.
definitely have to check in back in with that teacher.
Yep.
How was the kid doing, right?
Mhm.
They run down everything else, but I always want to spin back and say, well, how are you doing?
Yeah. And shout out to the teachers that actually
Dig in and do that
that
work.
dig in to do that and accepted some of the strategies, made those type of accommodations for the students, but then also the ones that were vulnerable enough to come to us at the end of the day when they had an issue with the child that they know
Absolutely.
they were struggling with. And sometimes, it was painful to see sometimes because it was like we can't go into every classroom and fix it for them
For
and be there
sure.
all the
For
time.
sure.
But it was like really trying to provide them and equip them with the tools to be able to you kind of like navigate that classroom and navigate those difficulties. And sometimes it was like, you know what, we might have to remove this kid from this actual
Absolutely.
classroom. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Sometimes, but I know a lot of teachers, and we know a lot of teachers that took it home,
No
and
question.
it actually did impact their attendance sometimes,
Yep.
their health,
Yep.
and even their relationships at times.
Yep.
Because you even I can't remember who it was, but I remember one of the teacher's husband was like, "Yeah, she's come home every night and she's like tired
Yep.
and like what's going on in
Burnt
here?"
out.
Yeah, burnt out, and it was like that's where you hear the teacher burnout
Absolutely.
and the teacher mental health. But that's another reason why we try to create the journal.
The
If you
the
don't have a journal, go get the journal. Mark Period Musings is
Please
for
pick
those
up Mark
teachers, man.
Period
Go pick
Musings.
it up, man.
Please
Because
pick up Mark Period
you gotta
Musings.
you gotta journal. You gotta write it down. You gotta talk to somebody. He and I think, did a lot in terms of our mental health, trying to run that building.
Absolutely.
We talk to each other on a regular basis.
Yep.
Before, during, and after school, really trying to wrap our heads around as we went to go pick up our kids, make dinner, and things like that. You got to have somebody that you can actually purge to. Can
No
you do it with
question.
your significant other? Yeah, but a lot of times it might be helpful to talk to somebody that's actually in your profession.
Yeah, I mean, I
Um,
think there was so many times or whatever. My wife, does some similar work in regards to, she's a therapist or whatever. So she talks to people, helps people with strategies and everything else, but it's radically different,
right.
in a lot of respects or whatever. So when I'm talking in her mind, it's like, well, why didn't you just tell them this, or why didn't you? Like, yeah, it don't work like that in the school. The time is really regimented and
Yep.
to the minute and everything else. So
Mhm.
you can't just spin off and do this, that, or the other thing every single time or whatever.
Right.
In a realistic situation, a real life situation, yeah, you probably could do this, but trying to teach them the strategies to be in a controlled environment like
Mhm.
that, it's a little bit different.
And speaking about like mental health, so remember we just met with Star the other day,
Yes.
and shout out to Miss Star with I
Shout
think
out Gary Starr.
is it Glisa?
I couldn't tell you exactly.
Glisa or Glisa? I'm sorry, Miss Star, but shout out her. She's doing a lot of wellness and
Yeah.
social emotional stuff for the teachers right now, right?
Teachers, daycare. She's been
Right.
doing a lot of PDs, just trying to help them, understand a few of
Right.
the strategies and things like that, and it's really good work. So,
Right. And she made a huge distinction
Mhm.
between self care and self soothing.
No
She had
question.
my ear with that.
It's a big thing or whatever. We do things or whatever to satisfy us that are self-soothing things.
Like drinking wine,
Yep.
having that treat. Well,
Having that-
sometimes I guess that could be self care too. But drinking
Sure.
wine and that stuff type that.
Drinking and going out to the bars and
Yeah.
hanging with friends and things
But that's
like that.
soothing.
But
That's
it's
like
soothing.
pacifying. It's placating.
No question. Like, so it's a temporary thing. It's a temporary
Exactly.
thing, and to be able to do self-care, it's a continuum. It's an ongoing thing where what we do. Sometimes we just go get a haircut, make you feel better, right?
Yep.
Shout out to my boy Old Breezy, Old Brown that
OB.
did the haircuts, for the kids for picture day.
Shout out OB.
You should have seen some of them students transform like they just from getting that haircut
These-
and get that lifted off of
The
you.
confidence was crazy.
It's crazy. So getting a massage, taking a walk, doing some reflection.
We do a lot of walks at work.
What? I mean, the brainstorming, doing the walks and the conversations oftentimes spin into the pods, right? Like we're
Absolutely.
doing pods before we even do pods. So like,
We low key should walk around with a GoPro.
no question, because a lot of the conversations get crazy. But
Absolutely.
but that's a big part of it. Journaling, making sure you have somewhere safe to put your thoughts. Like you just said, me and you being able to bounce ideas off of each other for the last 5 or 6 years has been like amazing for me in my personal and professional life, because it makes you think back to like, dang, we talked about that. How do I want to approach it now?
Exactly.
But I've been bouncing the ideas off, and my man's had a lot of same ideas, but he had a little bit of a different thing. So like, let me twist it, let me use that. So it's a major thing, man, for you to be able to have somebody to kind of have a conversation with,
Mm-hmm.
and for kids. And for adults, I'm gonna say for adults, a lot of times we have to get our love outside of the school building, meaning that we may have to go to a therapist. We may have to go to somebody that, a family friend that we really can trust it, to really have
Mm-hmm.
that conversation with. But for a lot of the kids in the building, they need these people, right? They
Yeah.
need people in the buildings to be able to advocate for them, because when things start to go left or too far right, they
Mm-hmm.
say, no, let me pull it back in, because this kid really needs this particular piece.
Right.
This has to be there for this kid in order for us to actually get him on this regular track thing or whatever that we think is so great, but it's really having a lot of issues too. Um, we got to actually put these strategies together for this kid to be able to get to that point. And so it's a big thing, man. It's really paramount to,
Right.
and I don't really see. I think the pandemic messed up a lot of things in regards to mental health, because again, we just started giving things, and it almost became an enabling situation in a lot of
Yes.
situations, right?
Yes.
But just think about how much more people was appreciative when you were doing that, and how much more people was putting in effort when you was doing that. And again, it's a cost thing for a
Yeah.
lot of schools. They can't continuously do that.
Provide that.
It's a,
Funds run
it's a
out.
it's a shortages thing in terms of the manpower to be able to make that happen. But if you're not feeding into your community as far as the mental health, as far as helping them reflect, helping people have, and
Yes.
again, what we say, sometimes these people need the time back. How many times we seen where our coworker or our colleague was falling down, Walt, and it's like, you need
Go,
to take a break.
go home.
You got to go
Go pick up
home.
your son.
Go, because you got to get out of here. This is like, you can see the weight on some people, right? And so we really need to be able to key in with that. But again, I understand that schools are a business, and they really need you to get kids to the next level quickly. But I
Yeah.
don't see where that happens. And then
Yeah.
I really don't see where it happens where we're not developing the relationships and giving the resources and doing the things or whatever
Yeah.
that makes them mentally and emotionally strong enough to sit down and
Right.
listen to somebody in an academic setting. It's they
Right.
all go hand in hand.
And we got to check on those adults that we see always working.
The,
A lot
the,
of times when they always working, they working late, they come in early, they either trying to avoid something, they going through something, trying to keep their mind busy.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times when them idle
Yeah.
minds come up, that's an issue.
No
And then
question.
even when you just mentioned about COVID, when you said like they were throwing a lot of things that became enabling, think about the people whose mental health is definitely disturbed now because they were able to work in isolation.
Yeah.
Now I got to jump back into this.
I got to go
pool of
back
people,
socially.
and that's kind of hindered a lot of people from even going back. That's why we don't have a
Yeah.
lot of people going.
I mean,
coming back to these
the
spaces.
anxiety spiked, bro.
Absolutely.
And again, the anxiety spiked for a lot of different reasons. I think there were people who start to realize this administration really don't really care whether I'm mentally strong or if they just care about whether I can come into this classroom and do what they're asking me to do
Absolutely.
for this time. And we
Absolutely.
start to see that, right? But we also start to see where like the anxiety got so high because we were in isolation, and now it's like, do I want to go back into that setting where I know it's going to be rah rah rah, and I got to be rah 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 to be able to combat it,
Mhm.
and I don't know if I have it anymore.
And listen, I'm gonna tell you about a specific event. Well, I don't know if this was pre or post COVID.
Mm-hmm.
This is how you know when somebody is really dealing with something mentally. We had a teacher helping out with a fundraiser. Shout out to her. She was a great teacher, love her.
No
She
question.
was helping out with a fundraiser. I'm sorry to laugh, but
I
we
know
had
what
a
you're talking
teacher
about
come
now.
into the office. Y'all remember when them chicken sandwiches came out and they had the black lady bent over like tired? Man, she came in there just like that because the kids were so wound up about the donuts coming from Krispy Kreme.
She couldn't take it no
She
more.
came in there.
She couldn't take
She
no
handed
more.
us the list and she said, "If
She was full.
what she said,
If she asked me
You
one
about-
more question
about
about these donuts,
she
Lost
lost it
it.
over those donuts." But it's funny, but it's not funny because we recognize, like,
she
what?
had enough.
She had enough. She was overwhelmed. She was tired. Like it was just too much going on.
But you know what you be saying though? When things start going bad, that little thing be that one thing that
That was
break
it.
it be like the break the camel's
straw
back. It be
that broke the
that
camel.
one little bitty thing. And it sounded crazy to
And
us.
we love her.
We love her.
We love her.
We
she
love
know
her.
who we talking about. She watching.
Absolutely.
She know we love her.
We
so.
love her, but like we knew. We
Right.
knew like that the straw had broke.
Yeah.
And it was funny kind of at the time. Not really, but like it was funny to us because we laughed at everything for one. But like for two, it was just like, nah, she full. She had enough. Let's give her this hug and try to get her to calm down a
Exactly. And
little
that's what it
bit.
was. Because in that moment, we did show her some love.
No
And
question.
then one more was we found all the trash down in this room. And a lot of kids was like, "Oh, that's nasty. She nasty." Talking about this teacher. That's a lot. When the whole gang of kids is saying, calling you nasty, you nasty.
You nasty.
Teachers are people too, and kids can be mean to teachers. Believe it or not.
And the girl who was saying it, the ringleader,
Big boss.
so cold at making you feel like
Yeah,
this.
small.
She was so cold at it. And this is another. Them kids be crazy with it, bro. Like she got that charisma already, but the way she said it stung so bad.
Because she came upstairs to my office and threw away a honey bun in my office. And before I knew, I almost said her name. She said, "Why would you do that? You nasty."
You nasty.
Before we knew it,
we had to separate them.
we had to remove
had to
all the
separate
kids
them.
out of the room for that teacher to allow that teacher to come in, and
she had that breakdown.
She didn't work for the rest of the day.
She
Because
had
I
that
think it was
breakdown.
after lunch.
Yep.
And we had to give her that moment. And
Yep.
again, we don't say that to be laughing at her as a joke, but it was just like, these are instances when we recognize, like, these human beings, these adults, even though a kid is saying it, it still pierces the soul.
It's tough. It's tough.
And we say sticks and stones may break your bones and words never hurt me.
Man, you crazy, man.
Words make you feel some kind of way.
They definitely hurt. I'm gonna tell you that. There's been times where I ain't never been touched, and somebody said something to me, and it resonated for the rest of that day, the rest of that week, the rest of that. Like, it's still stuff you remember when you was kids that people said to you that you never got rid of it. You know, so but, yeah, man. But this is what we've been talking about, and it's about really connecting the strategies to the people or whatever. Having people in there that are equipped enough to be able to look at situations and say, "No, let me intervene on this to be able to help this." Not just the kids, though, right? We just said that because there were a lot of situations where adults were breaking down and coming to us or whatever, and we knew like certain situations were going on with some adults outside of the building, to where it was a lot, you know, for them to even make it in there and really be trying. So we commend all the adults that are doing that, and we really commend these kids or whatever because we asked them to do a whole lot
of stuff.
And sometimes we're not even willing to do some of those things that we're asking kids to do. When we're challenged in that way, we get upset with the other adult that's asking us that. So I really commend the kids, especially those kids that are going through a mental health journey.
Right.
And they're not necessarily always getting the resources that they need, but they stick with it because they know the importance of it. You know, it's really rare that you see a kid that really is on it like that. But to me, that's always a credit to the parents as well, because those parents really are digging in and they know, like, yeah, I'm gonna have your back through this process, but you really gotta, you know, do what you gotta do to be able to get to the next level, because I'm not gonna always be here.
Right.
And you gotta learn how to do that, and you gotta learn how to do that for yourself, and that's the biggest thing about a lot of this stuff. You know.
And shout out to the adults and the teachers that are supporting these students, and please don't forget to support yourself. We about to get out of here, but be on the lookout for the I just need a minute.
I just need a minute.
It's gonna be a journal coming your way soon. So until next time, what's your motive?
Peace.
Peace.